Consequences. Listen, most times when people come into a workshop on classroom management, what they're actually hoping to get is some exotic new consequence, right? Grace, I've got this kid, he won't stay in his seat, what do you got? Well, try my new and improved Velcro suit, guaranteed. There are no exotic new consequences. If there were, we'd all be using them and none of us would have classroom management issues. It's much more complex than that. So let me start you off with a story and then I'll unpack the things that are inside this story. I was teaching at a school where kids were not allowed to have food in the classroom, even unopened and unconsumed. If it was visible in the classroom, the teacher was supposed to confiscate it. So my kids were working on something silently by themselves, and I saw, I had a student, his name was Jose. He's still alive, his name still is Jose. And Jose had on his desk a candy bar. He was not eating it, and it was not open, but it was sitting on his desk. So I walked over to him and I whispered in his ear, Jose, please give me the candy bar. And he said, oh, I forgot, and he stuffed it into his pocket. I said, Jose, I really appreciate that you now want to follow that procedure or that classroom rule, but I do need you to give me the candy bar. Would you please give it to me? He says, no, it's gone, it's done, it's what? What? I said, Jose, your choices right now are give me the candy bar, in which case I'm going to put it on my desk. It's going to stay there for the rest of the period, and at the end of the period I'm going to give it back to you, and nothing else is going to happen. Or you can choose not to give me the candy bar again, in which case you are choosing to step outside, have a private conversation with me, and get a phone call home. I know which one I want you to choose. You think about what you want to do. I'll come back and ask for it in a second. And I walked away. And in my mind, as I'm walking away, I start to think, am I going too far? Do I really have to go all the way to the wall with a candy bar that's not opened, wasn't being consumed, and is now put away? Do I? But then I remembered, he's testing me, right? There's a rule on the books that I said I would enforce, and now my job is to come through with safety and structure because that's ultimately what he wants from me. And in my recovered state, I went around my class checking on everybody, popcorn, 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 popcorn. I come back to Jose, and I say, Jose, here we go. May I please have the candy bar? And he said, no, what? Why are you making such a big deal about this? I said, all right, please step outside. He goes, ah, and he goes outside. I check on the class, popcorn. I'm out on the porch. I was in a portable, and we had these porches. I'm out on the porch, but I got my foot in the door, looking at my class. I'm talking with Jose out here, and I said, Jose, I don't know why you won't give me the candy bar. I don't know what the issue is, but if the issue is that you don't want anybody to see you give me the candy bar, then you can give it out to me out here on the porch. I'm going to put it in my pocket. I will never take it out of my pocket. At the end of the period, I will let everybody go. When everybody is gone, I will give you the candy bar back, and I will write you a pass to your next class so you're not late. But I do need you to give me the candy bar. And if you choose to not give it to me again, you are choosing a referral for defiance. Think about what you want to do. Here we go. May I please have the candy bar? And he said, Mrs. Dearborn, I'm not giving you the candy bar. All right, please wait here. I went inside, popcorn, 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 wrote the referral, popcorn, popcorn, popcorn. I go back out on the porch, I give him the referral. I say, Jose, I do not understand this decision, but it is your decision to make, and I can respect that. Here's your referral, I'll see you in 2 days. He says, whatever, and he walks away. In this particular school, any referral to the office, regardless of what it was for, was an automatic 2-day class suspension, which is very rare. But in any event, I wasn't going to see him for that period, and the next period he was going to be gone as well. I go back into my class, and all I can think is, why won't he give me the candy bar? I was being super nice, made it clear what his choices were and the consequences, and it was like, but sometimes kids make strange choices, and there's nothing you can do about that. It's their choice to make. Now, if the candy bar does not seem like a realistic scenario for you, what if it was a cell phone or an iPod? It's exactly the same thing. I will say, before I unpack that story with the assumptions and strategies, I will say this. If I could go back in time to that moment, I would have handled the whole thing completely different. If I could go back in time, I would have said, Jose, put the candy bar away or I'll have to take it. Right? And the whole thing is avoided. But hindsight is 20/20. And in that moment in time, what I chose to say was, please give me the candy bar, which is a totally reasonable request made in a totally reasonable way. And I can't allow students, when I make a reasonable request, to evade or sidestep the request. Because if I do, what they learn behaviorally is, when Grace catches me breaking a rule, there's wiggle. There's a way out. I just got to look for it, which is the exact opposite of what I want them to learn behaviorally. Behaviorally, I want them to learn that it's in their best interest to comply when I make a reasonable request, because I will take it all the way to the wall. I won't be mean, it'll be gentle, but it will gently be all the way to the wall. And so then they think, I could resist, but it's Mrs. Dearborn. I'll just do it. Right? That's what I want them ultimately to think in their head. It's a behavioral lesson. So, assumptions that are inside of this. 2 assumptions. The first one is there are no punishments. There are just consequences. Consequences are tools that teachers use to teach behavior and responsibility. We don't punish kids. What we do is we make clear to kids what the consequences are that are attached to the choices that they're making. Right? All choices bear fruit. And some of that fruit is sweet, and some of that fruit is bitter. And the sooner that we can get kids to internalize that truth, that their choices matter in their world and in the world, the better off we're all going to be. So that's our first assumption. There are no punishments, there are just consequences. Our second assumption is we have no control over kids. What we have is commonly referred to as the illusion of control. Somebody just saw the visual. What we have is commonly referred to as the illusion of control. But if I could have controlled Jose, I would have made him give me that candy bar. Kids make their own choices. And the best we can do is make it clear to them what the consequences will be, both positive and negative, for the choices that they're making. So here, in a nutshell, is a progression you could try when faced with a defiant student that might work out for you. First, when faced with defiance, assume the best about the kids. They want to be appropriate. They want your help to learn how. Their defiance is just their way of saying, I haven't learned it enough yet. Please help me learn it some more. I don't quite trust you to come through for me yet. Soft eyes, soft voice. When I was a third-year teacher, a mentor teacher of mine told me, if you're having trouble keeping the frustration or the upset out of your voice when you're talking with a student in a disciplinary moment, focus on your eyes. If you keep your eyes soft, your voice will follow. It is physiologically impossible to have an edge in your voice and keep your eyes soft. It's true, you can try it at home. Once you start to kind of get upset, you will either start to squint or you will start to spread your eyes open wider. So focus on the eyes, and your voice will follow. Make their choices clear. Give them choices, make the consequences attached to those choices clear, let them make their choice. Respect the choice they make. It doesn't matter if they choose what you wanted. Respect the choice they make. In the story with Jose, at no point did he choose what I wanted him to choose. But it was his choice to make, and I can respect that because it's not personal. It's not about me and him, in the sense that he's not trying to drive me crazy, right? He's just testing me. It's a behavioral lesson. He gets to make his own choices. Respect the choice they make until you get the response that you want. Repeat if necessary, right? Until you get them to make that new choice.
Part of the role of consequences is to teach responsibility, that their choices have impact. And if used judiciously, that's what they teach. How do they work? Well, they provide a pause for students. Okay, example, I've got Greg's my student here. Let's say Greg is not participating or he's spacing out. And let's say this works. He makes the choice. I will come up to him, let's say I use proximity. I'll stand near Greg, and let's say he gets quiet, and I walk away and he's still quiet. What's actually happening underneath the surface is my proximity triggers in his mind an awareness, a conscious awareness of what he's choosing. So I get near him, he says to himself, am I paying attention? No. Do I want to pay attention? Yeah, I guess so. Now he's paying attention, I walk away, and he's still paying attention. That's what happens underneath the surface. Now, if this doesn't work to keep him focused, then I will go up the ladder from the gentlest to the less gentle. I might, for example, lean and put my hand on Greg's desk while delivering my lesson to the students. Please practice this at home before you try it with your kids. So we go up the ladder finding the gentlest possible consequence that gets the student to pause and make a new choice. The gentlest possible consequence. I call this the teacher harangue. Looking for victim volunteer? Jan, thanks for volunteering. Okay, Jan's my student. And let's say Jan has earned a severe consequence. She'll be staying after school, young lady. Now, if in your school, after school doesn't work as a consequence, then in your mind, as I do this, just substitute any strong consequence, it'll still work. So here's the typical teacher harangue. Jan, I am sick and tired of your attitude. You're staying after school, young lady, and sit up and fly right over and wipe that smile off your face. Right? I'm in her face. Right? What does Jan actually hear? This is what she hears. She hears Jan, buck, 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 after school, buck, 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 buck. She hears her name and the consequence, because that's what has the power. She also hears something else. She hears this. Jan, I feel weak, helpless, and frustrated as a teacher. I'm going to take it out on you. She hears my weakness when I give her the teacher harangue. More powerful to go under the wave. Jan, you need to stay after school today. She's like, well, I'm staying after school today. Much more powerful to go under the wave. If the consequence doesn't work, we don't need to get into the kid's face to deliver it. Change the consequence, or try something I'll talk about in a few minutes, what to do when consequences don't work. But to get in a kid's face, it just sends the mixed message. So, let's go on to a different one. Sir, what's your name, please? Stan. Thank you, Stan. Okay, Stan's my student. He's earned a severe consequence. He'll be staying after school, young man. Now, Stan has clearly earned this consequence. Everybody in the class knows it. But I happen to know Stan's emotional state right now, and if I give him this consequence, he's going to go ballistic. We're talking serious temper tantrum. Everybody in the class will be taking bets to see how long it lasts, right? Complete disruption. You know what I'm talking about? So you know what I do? I do not give Stan the consequence. I don't give it to him. I just use my people skills. I walk up to him, have a private conversation. Stan, I know you're having a hard day. Do the best you can to calm down. We can talk about it later. So later on, when he's calm and I'm calm, we have a conversation. Now that might take a while. That's okay. We have a conversation. And I say, Stan, I really appreciate how well you calmed down when I asked you. That was great. And before you did, your behavior was out of bounds, so you will meet after school. Word will spread like wildfire that the teacher was actually consistent. See, I used to think that we had to give the consequence right away to quiet the kid down and to be consistent. But it would backfire because the kids would go nuts and they'd argue about it. They're emotive. Let them calm down and then do it. You can even tell your students, kids, sometimes I'm not going to give the consequence right away, but it's not because I'm not catching it. It's not because I'm inconsistent. Don't worry. Check me out. You'll get the consequence. It'll work. And then you do it once you point it out. And the kids are all right. Teacher is consistent, I can calm down. The goal here is to keep as many kids on task as possible, to keep volcanoes from erupting with individual kids. Let them find their own emotive calming. And then we can give the consequence. So those are two simple tricks. Other tricks for consequences. My favorite consequence, private meeting between teacher and student. It gives me a chance to calm down and the kid a chance to calm down. What you don't want to do is box yourself into a corner. Johnny, your behavior is so out of bounds, you and I are going to meet together every day after school for the next 4 months. Well, then you're stuck with Johnny for 4 months. But your mouth has to say something, right? Because there's this charge to say, you and I are going to meet. Woohoo, right? It could be 5 seconds. So we meet. And in that meeting, I can farm out different consequences based on what's really needed. And I love to give kids a choice about what consequence they're going to get. Well, Johnny, you were drawing on your desk, so you can stay after school for 15 minutes and clean my desks, or you can stay after school for 40 minutes and do your homework. Which would you prefer to do? Whatever choice he makes, he's much more likely to follow through with it because he's now chosen it. And so there's less fight from kids who choose a consequence. And when they choose, they're owning the responsibility much more deeply. So it's nice to have consequences on the same level of the hierarchy. Here's one more little trick. I call it the picket fence syndrome. Picket fence is designed so the pickets are spaced evenly so the gaps aren't very big, so misbehavior can't go through. But if you're missing pickets, misbehavior pours through the cracks. Each picket is a consequence. A lot of teachers, especially new teachers, they'll have their nice, neat-looking hierarchy of consequences. But then as a mentor teacher, I go and talk to them. I say, well, which ones do you actually use? Or which ones do you feel comfortable with? Because if you don't use it, what happens is you've got these missing pickets. So you've got, say, reminder, warning, missing picket, suspension. The gap's so big, and you go, well, I can't suspend the kid, but the warning isn't enough. I'm going to have to live with the noise. You don't have to live with the noise. What you have to do is either use the consequence, get comfortable with it, or get rid of it and change it. Get comfortable with it or get rid of it. Now, most of the time, with beginning teachers especially, the consequence that gets them most anxious is anything that involves the office. Sending a kid to the office. Because, you're not tenured, you feel insecure, and then you want to look bad or weak. And so what you can do is you can meet with the office, meet with the administrator in advance. Johnny, if Johnny does this in class, would it be appropriate for me to send him out? And the principal or vice principal, absolutely. Great. Well, the truth is he does it all the time, so could we pencil him in tomorrow for 10:30, right? Now the administrator is at his or her office waiting for Johnny to show up, supporting you because he or she knows that he's coming. And so it softens that blow. Sending kids to other classes is a great consequence. They go to another class and they have, the other teacher knows that if Johnny comes to my class, he is hanging by a thread. One peep, he's to the office. You can even write the referral and send it over with Johnny. And it's sitting on his desk. Now there's a kinesthetic visual reminder that this is what's about to happen. Another way is to write a letter home to parents or a referral like that, put it in an envelope, put it on the kid's desk, and say, Johnny, this is going to happen at the end of class. But if you behave really well, we got 26 minutes left. For the next 26 minutes, when class is over, you and I come up to the front of the class, you take this envelope and you tear it in half, we'll do a little ritual, you can throw it in the garbage. So there's a kinesthetic, visual connection between his choice and what's going to happen. It tends to get kids more on board.
You got to be calm, though. What happens is teachers oftentimes, they get so hooked into this behavior of this kid, and they take it personally, and it's not personal. And so then kid goes, you can't make me. Yes, I can make you. And now you have escalated the situation. You are no longer in control of your emotions, and you're escalating the confrontation. So you need to remain calm, and remember the key is give the kid choices, make clear what the consequences are. If you continue, you're choosing to go outside. Do you want to continue? Yeah, I want to continue. Please step outside. I am now calling security. Right? So you just very calmly, it's not personal, I don't hate you, I actually love you, and thank you for misbehaving and letting me do the other half of my job today. And if you won't do what I'm asking you to do, ultimately it's a referral or it's security. And I've worked in a lot of schools where I've called security. I had a girl my first year, her name was Christy Brown, and she came in, she's like 6 feet tall, and she came in there and I said, everybody take out your textbooks. It's like day 3 of school, and she said, I'm not taking out my textbook. I said, Christy, please take out your textbook. She goes, ain't no little white woman telling me what to do. I was like, oh my God, what am I supposed to say to that? I said, well, you can take out your book or you can go up to the main office. She said, she stood up, comes up to me and said, you going to make me go up to the office? Yes. So I called security, and we had to sit there and wait for security too, because I can't move on with the lesson while she's still standing there, right? And that took like 10 minutes. So we're just sitting there, and she's looking down at me, and I'm looking up at her, and we're waiting for security, and security came, and they took her, and then after school I had her, because the administration decided that her punishment should be detention with me after school. So I have her after school, and I said, Christy, you can spend 15 minutes having a conversation with me about your attitude in my class, or you can sit here for an hour and be silent. She said, I will sit for an hour. She sat in that chair, and she stared at me for an hour. And the hour was up, she left, and then, but the next day, she was softer. Like the next day I asked her to take out a book, she took out a book. Right? And her attitude got a little bit better and a little bit better, and because I was clear and I was consistent, I won her over, and eventually I was walking down the hall one day, and she used to call me Gigi. It's a long story, but She wouldn't call me by my last name, and she called me Gigi. So I was walking down the hall one day, and she's with some of her friends, and she walks by me, and she goes, "That right there is Miss Grace Dearborn. She is my favorite teacher, and you gonna love her. Don't you be messing with Miss Gigi, And for the rest of the year, she was like my bodyguard. Like, she would, don't mess with Gigi. So, but kids, they love when you're consistent. It might not sound like it or look like it at the time, but ultimately they internalize that. And ultimately you just give the choices and you make it clear what the consequences are, and you follow through with compassion without escalating, is what I would say.